Okay, everybody, welcome to another concert review. This one was a concert that I was not going to go to. My friend actually asked me a while ago if I would go with her. She had an extra ticket, but I thought, I have a concert the day before that I was actually playing in, and I thought I'd be super wiped out and just want to chill the next day. But as soon as the day came, concert day, I thought about it, and I looked online and I just saw that there was a single ticket in a very good place for a decent price. So I thought, let's just do it. I had only seen Nine Inch Nails one other time, and that was back in the Fragile tour. And I thought, you know what? Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor has been such an important part of my life. And his music got me through a whole bunch of tough times. And I thought, songs like Something I Can Never Have and Hurt were always those tunes that you would come to when you were at your lowest point, and it seemed like a friend was there for you. So I thought, I'm going to try to see Nine Inch Nails as many times as possible because, like I always say, you never know when it's going to be the last tour for anybody. It said that the show started at 7:30, but the opening act was going to be a DJ. So I wasn't in the biggest hurry to get there in time, even though I wanted to do this review and capture the whole show. I ended up getting there a little after 7:30, and the DJ hadn't started yet. They were just playing these trippy, trancy loops through the PA system, and it was creating this really strange atmosphere. Usually when I go to a concert, it's exciting. They're usually playing heavy metal through the PA system because I go to a lot of metal shows. And so there's like an excitement in the air. But at this show, it was real kind of eerie. It was like just melancholy and just real chill. I went to get a drink and I told the lady, this is the most chill Nine Inch Nails audience I've ever seen before. Back in '94, I think, when they did the Woodstock, when there's all that mud being thrown on stage. And that's really what I remember about old school Nine Inch Nails live, just through the video. And when I saw them during the Fragile tour, it was a lot more chill than that. But still, the audience was really hyped up at that show. So getting there and just having that weird trance music happening was an interesting choice. What was great is that the people to the left of me never showed up, so I had a lot of space, a lot of leg room, so it was kind of cool. When I sat down though, I found out that I was right in front of the B stage. So there's this little stage in the middle, and then to the left of me, there's this the gigantic stage, the full setup, stage A. They were both covered in black curtains, so you could not see what was inside. It was really cool. It was like this surprise. I didn't look up any footage from previous concerts or anything. I didn't look up the set list. I really wanted all of this to be a big surprise for me. The whole stadium was lit with this red lighting, which was really cool with that trance music going on. I thought, man, I feel like I'm in the opening scene from Blade, if you've ever seen that, where they're in that like dance club and it's just like all red and, some crazy shit's about to go down. The red might have been all the blood, but yeah, here it was just the lights. You could tell by every detail of the show that Trent Reznor is one of those guys that's kind of like a control freak, kind of like me. Like you could tell he had his hand in every detail because it all just worked really well. You could tell it was like a vision. Like the whole show came together like somebody's single vision. I love that. And I know it's not just him, but him and his team or whatever, but they did a really good job putting together a whole cohesive idea. Well, next thing I know, the DJ starts up and yeah, I wasn't a huge fan. He's called Boys Noise, and a lot of people when I texted about it were like, man, you're just old, you're like an old guy yelling at the clouds or whatever when you're complaining about a DJ opening the show. And I'm like, don't give me that. Like, I've been around, I remember the whole DJ phase. I used to go to First Avenue Danceteria. They had DJs. I'd go to Ground Zero. They would have, industrial night, and they'd have DJs then as well. I actually saw King's X there once too, just a side note. And strip bars, had the DJs, right? It's also back when MTV had the show called AMP, because, techno and industrial was getting so big at one time. And I went head first into that stuff. I was still a metalhead, but I was buying like synthesizers. I was getting into looping. So I love that aspect of music. So I'm not bashing the DJ. I just sat there and, they didn't have any light show going on. They didn't have any visuals. And most of us were sitting down. I mean, the people on the floor, at least they felt like they were at a club, like at a rave or something. But I looked over, and by the way, the DJ was all the way to the back of the stadium. So I felt bad for the people right up in front where the stage was, the big stage, because they were looking the other way, and they probably heard the music and were like, all right, when's the first act gonna come out? And then after like 10 minutes, they're probably like, what the hell? This is the longest intro ever. But you look back and you see the DJ, and then he starts waving his arms, and people are kind of cheering. You can kind of tell they felt obliged to just, good job, good job. And I have nothing against him, like I said, but it just wasn't as cool as like a band coming out and, opening the show. But once again, it was all part of Trent's vision, But I took the time to, talk to a few people around me, which I don't want to be the annoying guy at the show, but, there were some really cool people, especially the lady in front of me. And then I went off and I grabbed a drink and I got this t-shirt, and it took forever because the lines were really long. And there wasn't a huge selection of shirts. And the one I really wanted was like backwards. They had the logo that looked really cool on the back, and the front looked like the back of a shirt. And I ended up getting this one, which is pretty sweet. And on the back, they show all the dates of the shows. And I didn't realize there were that many dates on this tour, the Peel It Back tour. And our date was right about the middle. So I figured, damn, hopefully Trent Reznor isn't worn out. You know, it's such a crazy, grueling tour from the looks of it. I got back to my seat and I was out for a long time. When I came back, the DJ was still doing his thing. It just seemed to go on forever, you know? All of a sudden I heard this cheering start to just kind of bubble up and spread and get louder and louder. And I looked down and everyone was kind of staring down and to the left. And just like a wrestler coming out, like a pro wrestler going out to the ring, Trent and company, he was surrounded by like security and other band members, was walking through the aisle. And he took a left, went up to the small stage and disappeared. And so I'm like, okay, here we go. You know, the DJ is going to finish and I think we're going to segue right into the small stage, which is really cool. I didn't know they were going to start on that stage. So there was no break. Like I said, part of a bigger vision. The DJ hit the last note and all of a sudden the curtain came down and the lights changed. It was really sweet. And it was this circle of like synthesizers and keyboards and a piano. And Trent was sitting there and he ended up playing the first song, just vocals and piano. A very slow burn way of going into it. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then a couple other musicians walked up and they were all standing in a circle. Well, Trent was sitting, and it looked like they were practicing in a little tiny room, and we were all just voyeurs watching them. So he ended up playing Right Where It Belongs, Ruiner, and Piggy on this stage. So there was a really cool intimacy to it, you know, especially because I was so close. I was only 6 rows back. After those 3 tunes, it was really cool how they transitioned. All of a sudden, the lights went out, and the big stage had the black curtain over the top of it still, and they had a projector playing this huge video of Josh Freese. I can never say his last name right, I'm just guessing. And he recently came in from the Foo Fighters. They did like a drummer trade. It was kind of interesting. It's almost like a baseball trade of pitchers or something. And they show him rocking out. And all that time that's happening, Trent and the other guys are walking back and they're going to the big stage. So you could just feel this buildup of excitement. And as soon as the curtain came down and they kicked into the first tune, I was like, this is well worth the ticket price. You know, I actually paid about $200 for my last minute ticket, but right around me, there were other seats that had like 2 or 3, and those were like $500 a piece. So I felt like I got a really good deal. But either way, I'm like, this is incredible. They opened with Wish, and then they went into March of the Pigs. It was just like this 1-2 combination that almost knocked me out. It was so intense. And they also played Reptile, which is one of my favorite songs off the Downward Spiral. I don't feel like it gets enough attention, but the whole lighting scheme was incredible. It was like green lighting, and then they had this visual of this electricity that would like bubble up right at the exact time. I just couldn't get over how visually stunning this whole thing was, that big stage, because they had a huge like transparent screen over everybody, so it was like this big box, but you could see through it because, like I said, it's transparent. But they could also project the visuals over the top of it, so at times it looked pretty intense. Check this out. It was great seeing Robin on guitar duties, you know, and backup vocals. Actually, he sang quite a bit during the show. I think maybe it was something Trent wanted him to do to help preserve his own voice, because Robin was singing the highest parts during the chorus of Gave Up. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty smart, because if you're going to play that many dates, you're going to have to preserve those vocal cords. So screaming every night like he used to do when he was in his 20s is probably not as doable these days. That being said, Trent sounded incredible. His voice never cracked. He sounded really strong. And, you know, even when he was on his piano, he had the subtleties going on. But whenever he wanted to, he could really let out some aggression. Where I was sitting, it sounded awesome on both stages, actually. It's just the intertwining of the electronic stuff mixed with the real instruments that really causes this juggernaut of sound. To me, it sounded the most incredible during Reptile, because it's kind of a plodding groove through the whole thing. And just the way that song came together just gave me chills. This lady behind me kept screaming, "I love you, Trent," like right into my ear. And then one time she just screams, "Have my babies, Trent." Like, go tell him over there. You don't have to yell. I've become that grouchy old guy at the gigs now. One thing that shocked me, though, was they went back to the small stage and they ended up playing Closer on that stage. And I would have bet $1,000,000 that he would have ended the show or at least played it towards the end on the big stage, because Closer was like his huge mainstream hit. Maybe he thought, it'd be kind of a twist to do that on the little stage. Nobody would ever expect that. So once again, one of those Reznor, surprises. One thing that really surprised me, and I'm really surprised this hasn't been addressed yet. Maybe it has, maybe they just think it's cool. We're going to leave it the way it is. But when they play the middle stage, they have these flashing lights that are so intense, it almost felt like they were trying to give us all epileptic seizures. I found myself squinting the whole time because it would just be like bam, 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 bam. It was like a visual assault on my eyes. And I just found myself, I was like, man, I wish I would have brought my shades to this concert. And it wasn't just me. I looked around and everyone was kind of like this. And then the lady in front of me actually put her head down on her husband or boyfriend's shoulder because she couldn't take it. I mean, the main stage had incredible lights too, and a few times it got a little too much, but with that screen on those visuals, it was a really nice thing to witness from a distance. But being that close to the B stage and just being pelted by those lights, it was like, light daggers coming at you. It was way too much. The fact that their LEDs didn't help either. If it was natural lighting like bulbs or something, it might have been less intense, but man, headaches all around. They went back to the big stage, thankfully, and kicked into Mr. Self-Destruct, which sounded huge. If you know that song, you know why. It's just that crazy distortion, and it's pretty pounding. It was pretty intense. And then he pulled out a couple tunes that I forgot were hits, but when he played them, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a big deal at one time. So Perfect Drug was awesome, especially because of the drum breakdown in the middle. That was intense. They had these cool lights going, and Josh was just going nuts on the drums. That was great. They played I'm Afraid of Americans, which is a Bowie song, great cover. One of the biggest hits of the night was The Hand That Feeds, because people were dancing, and I looked out because I had run to the bathroom. I came back and saw the scope of the whole audience, and people were just bouncing up and down. It was pretty sweet. One thing that I've never seen before at a show was they had this row of lights going down the center of the entire stadium. And what I love about this is they only utilized it a few times, but when they did, it looked really like Tron or something. It was so cool because Trent didn't have to have those, put in. I'm sure that was a big expense to only use a couple times in the show, but it really left a good memory, in my mind that they cared, everything was meticulously planned, and that looked freaking badass. People all around me kept screaming Head Like a Hole, of course, one of, Trent Reznor's other huge hits. And he eventually played it, and it was just as epic as you would think. And, there was kind of actually a pit going on, but the pit looked kind of weak because, I think it was because last week, a couple weeks ago, I saw Pantera with Amon Amarth, and it was like this pit was incredible. They had people rowing and crazy stuff. I was going to do a review about that show, but I don't know. I kind of lost steam on it. I waited too long, but if you guys want me to, let me know and I'll do it. And what better song to end with but Hurt? So everything just kind of calmed down, and all of a sudden the intro starts up with the crazy wind sound effects and all that. And people pulled out their cell phones nowadays, used to be lighters, and you could just look around and the whole place was lit up with those lights. And it created this cool light bulbing effect to the whole place. It added to the atmosphere of the song, and it really reminded me of back when I used to listen to the tune, when I was really dialed into that frequency of that depression. And I used to light my whole room with candles, and it kind of had that same look, except with cell phones. I was so filled with nostalgia, but I realized that the frequency of those kind of songs don't hit me the same anymore. I think that part of me, became very numb or just died out because it couldn't survive on its own weight after a while. I thought that was kind of ironic too, because the girl who invited me to the show initially was one of the big reasons why I felt so, like that at the time. Come on, we all went through our gothic or emo phase at one point, right? You could just tell that was going to be the last tune. So I got ready as soon as they hit the last note. They started playing Laura Palmer's theme. I ran up the stairs because I wanted to beat the crowd and ended up getting to the front door pretty quick. But when I looked out, I saw basically a monsoon outside. Not as intense as when I saw Metallica, Guns N' Roses way back in the day. That was crazy. The rain was blowing sideways back then. But I look and it was this heavy, rain. It looked like it was pretty windy out too. And then I realized that I had put my rain poncho in my back pocket. I don't know why, but I bring those to all the concerts now. I think it's because I was scarred by that Metallica GNR show. It was also nice that I had that Spot Hero spot just across the street. So I ran, I jumped in my truck and I felt so relieved that I only got the bottom of my pant legs wet. Overall, I know this is kind of a quicker review than most of my other ones, but I would say that I'm very happy I ended up going to the show. I was just going to skip it, like I said. But I could have used a different opening act. I'm just not a huge DJ guy, you know, when it comes to these kind of shows. And I could have done with all the flashing of the B stage just because it was so intense, but I like the intimacy of it. If they just would have had some, you know, static lighting or something, it would have been really, really cool. But overall, it was really great to see all these people come out to the XL to see a band like Nine Inch Nails that has been around for a long time and has been a huge part of a lot of people's lives. It was a good mix of different types of people. I saw a lot. It was like 50-50 male, female, you know. I would say most people were on the older side though. You know, it's just a generation thing that really connected with Nine Inch Nails. But there were some young people there too. Okay, everyone, let me know if you've ever seen Trent live. I know it's always worth it. He puts a lot of work into his vision, you know, for his concerts. And once again, that's the thing I think I respect the most out of the entire thing was the production aspect of it. Okay, leave a comment if you want to and let me know if you're gonna see him on this tour because he's still got a long way to go, but we'll see. Catch you guys later. Bye-bye.